they thought when they got in this race that their path would be through the Sun Belt and then plucking off, of course, what they thought at the time. Pennsylvania would be the easiest, but they even know in their own polling she's down in Pennsylvania.
It's obviously a close election, but we are starting to see the signs that Kamala Harris's campaign is on an overall downward trajectory. And in the past couple of days, many of the polls that have come out have been either favorable for Donald Trump or showed that honeymoon bump that Kamala was maintaining is starting to fade away. And obviously, it seems apparent at this point there has been very little to no DNC convention bump for Harris. In fact, you're seeing the opposite, and perhaps that's largely because the DNC itself did very little to actually appeal to independent voters. But the story may be much worse for their campaign than we think, because publicly they claim they're so confident Donald Trump is way down, and yet this week Kamala Harris is going to be campaigning in many different states that it doesn't seem like she should have to fight for. New Hampshire, for instance, Virginia, Minnesota. These are all states that conventional wisdom says, unless it is a huge landslide victory for Trump, Kamala should win those easily. And yet the fact that they're kind of concerned maybe about those states shows that the election is probably very close. And in fact, we may see some evidence that Trump is in the lead based on some of the internal polling of Kamala Harris's campaign itself. And these tell a very different story than what some of the national media polls are saying. And this maybe is the reason why privately the Democrats are not nearly as confident as they are publicly. We'll talk about it in today's video. So folks, I'm Vince with RTM News. If you enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so that way we can keep bringing you fresh news coverage like this. And I want to start today by reacting to Richard Barris, who went on Benny Johnson's show today, and he had a lot to say. So let's take a listen.
So we have a lot of polls coming out this morning showing that Trump's up by a point or two across swing states. Trafalgar, I know Rasmussen. You're saying that Kamala Harris, do not be shocked when Kamala Harris winds up a week from now after the debate at where Biden was. Where you're looking at 5 and 10 point gaps in swing states. Can you talk us through that?
I think that Kamala could do better in national polling and even in the national vote than Biden was gearing up to do, because there are just certain really deep blue areas where she's going to, it's not a walking corpse anymore. So they're going to get off their couch and they're going to vote, or they're going to mail in a ballot. However, that still will not help her with the voters that Biden was suffering with in like the northern Midwest and the Sun Belt states. They thought when they got in this race that their path would be through the Sun Belt and then plucking off, of course, what they thought at the time. Pennsylvania would be the easiest, but they even know in their own polling she's down in Pennsylvania. And
a big thing, we're going to talk about this later in the video, but she is down massively and losing ground by the day with white men in the Midwest. And you might think, oh, diversity, whatever. But at the end of the day, white men in the Midwest largely are one of the very key groups here who are going to decide the election, as well as even Hispanics in the Sun Belt, obviously a demographic that historically is very favorable to Democrats. Also, she's not doing that well in, but we'll talk about it later. Let's keep listening here to Richard Barris.
I'm going to blow the lid off of it. I mean, if I'm wrong, Kamala, you can release your poll right now and you can put it out on Twitter and show everybody that you're up in your polling, but that's not the case, so you can't do that, right? So you would drop it and it would say what? Trump plus almost 2, right? Because just saw it. So anyway, basically I'm telling you, they know this. And, there's like an environment that was giving her, it's like a high, and the response bias bloated her numbers. And when this dust settles, she could have a great debate performance, Benny. But the truth is debates don't really have a tremendous impact. There are 2 that will be added to the history books. Where they did. One was Ronald Reagan, of course, in his single debate against Jimmy Carter. And that's something that people like me and Sophologists talk about all the time. But the other one is going to be Joe Biden, just having a complete mental breakdown on TV because it was an emperor has no clothes moment. Look at the interview she did with Dana, whatever, Bash from CNN. If they taped almost an hour worth of footage, you're in this business. If they taped almost an hour worth of footage, all right, and they're only going to release 30-something minutes, and those 30-something minutes are awful because they're they and Democrats really felt like in order to stop what I'm saying from happening in a couple of weeks, she needed to knock out CNN interview. She didn't put it up. How bad is the rest of that interview if that's the section we got, Benny? You know what I'm saying? Like, think about that for a second. How bad is it?
Release the tapes.
Release
the tapes. Yeah.
So that makes my confidence level a lot less that she's going to go out there and knock this out of the park when it comes to the debate. She would need something. Even Biden was considered to have done significantly better. But what happened in the post-Labor Day environment? Trump just kept closing and closing. He's a very strong closer. I mean, yes, past his prologue, but it doesn't necessarily it doesn't guarantee that, past will be prologue. But damn, I mean, if you're the Democratic nominee, do you not want to be 10 points ahead of Donald Trump right now? You know how this goes.
No, absolutely. I mean, at this point in 2020, for instance, Biden was leading some of these national polls by like an average of 7.5. Hillary Clinton around the same margin in 2016. What's Harris at? 2, maybe? Average in the national polls, maybe now even less than that. Not where you want to be. Now, you could argue that the polls maybe this time are more accurate. Yes, if you're a Trump supporter, no reason to get complacent. But I look ahead to that debate, and many of the Democrats think she's going to easily run away with it. Let's remember, obviously, she's going to be better than Biden on June 27th, okay? Nothing can get worse than what Joe Biden was on June 27th. And so, in that sense, Democrats may look at it like a victory, and I guess to an extent they should, because their candidate can actually kind of speak. But let's also not forget, Kamala Harris was never the strongest debater. There's a reason why she kind of got booted out of the 2020 primary despite a very strong start. I mean, obviously there's no knowing what's going to happen in the debate. Obviously, Trump can have a very bad performance as well, but I would not go into that confidently thinking this is something that's going to secure the election for Kamala Harris, because if that was true, Kamala would be trying to do several debates against Trump if they really thought she had the advantage. But you see, they backed out of the Fox News debate. Some other things are still in the air at the current moment. At the end, it seems like we might only be getting one debate with Trump, right? So some things to consider there.
You know how this closes. By mid-September, your lead is fading. By October, you got your push polls and your Biden plus 17s that are trying to still give people something to snort up their nose, right, to keep them going another couple of weeks, but it doesn't happen. And then come election day, this huge swarm of people will come to the polls, crawling across broken glass. They'll walk over the hot lava just to get to the damn voting booth to vote for this guy. So, yeah, that's what I'm telling you is going to happen in a couple weeks, Mark.
So there you heard Richard Barris, who you might disregard and say he's a little bit biased to the right, and that's certainly true. But he is far from the only person saying this. In fact, even Jake Tapper over at CNN recently admitted a very similar thing, which is that the internal polls for Kamala Harris do not show this type of dominance that they're claiming. In fact, Trump is leading, especially in the state of Pennsylvania. And if Trump wins PA, he has a very easy path to 270. There's a reason why people are saying it's going to decide the election. Recently, Jake Tapper went on this thread and said that he checked in with sources in Michigan, Wisconsin, and PA today, and all of them said that the race is essentially tied within the margin of error. And you're still seeing that, by the way, in some of the public polls as well. But he puts out and goes on. Latest in the blue wall states. In Michigan and Wisconsin, Harris is up maybe a point or two, but in PA, okay, this is going to be the biggest state, arguably, right? It has the most electoral votes. She may be down a couple of points. The sources I spoke to said she's doing better than Biden was, and that's undeniably true. I don't think anyone at this point can refute that, because Biden was just so bad at the end. But take a listen to this. Though in Pennsylvania, she has lost ground with white men, and that's something that's very key to remember here. It's basically common sense, and I think everyone knows that at this point Harris does much better with the Democrat base and the core demographics, I guess, than Joe Biden was by the very end. But this is something very important to remember about Kamala. She is very alienating to white men, but also not just white men, right? Hispanics as well. She does not poll nearly as well as Biden did or many past Democrats did. That's a key demographic in the Sun Belt, right? We're talking about states like Arizona, Nevada specifically. She's a little bit underwater there, but especially here in the Rust Belt where most people believe that election is going to be decided. Hey, the fact that you are dropping off with white men, even in comparison to Joe Biden at the end, not a good sign. And this could be a moment when that sort of forgotten demographic that we forget, oh, white men still exist in America, may be the deciding factor here. Jake Tapper goes on, to be clear, this is not public polling info from Washington Post or CNN. This is from internal political polling that to which parties and politicians have access. I understand skepticism about polling, but these internal polls tend to be more comprehensive and detailed. Whatever they're saying verbally, I think the evidence is pretty clear. The Kamala Harris campaign is not confident in themselves. Not at all. I really don't think so. Again, why would you be campaigning in Virginia, Minnesota, and New Hampshire? If you really thought you were that much ahead, you're concerned about those states? Okay, well, I'm not saying Trump's going to win them, but clearly that shows they don't think this election is way in their favor, you know, because if they really were cocky about this, I don't think you'd be wasting time, especially when Kamala Harris is a brand new candidate and she needs to be focused on hitting those swing states hard, but she's trying to play some defense here. Why might that be? And why are they so obsessed with shielding her from more debates, shielding her from interviews, all this stuff? Because they are fundamentally nervous. They are a nervous campaign, and that should tell you a lot. That said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But until next time, I've been Vince with RTM News. Peace.